Shalom and welcome back to Israel with Aline. Everyone knows that João Batista baptized here in the waters of the Jordan River, but what if I told you there's another place where João also baptized? A mysterious place full of water called Enon, chosen by João to be the continuation of his ministry. A biblical transformative place, but one that was also forgotten and lost for centuries. Today, let's rediscover Enon. So if you're ready, let's get started. We are next to the Jordan River, more specifically in the same area where John used to baptize. This place nowadays is called Qasar el Yehuda. And imagine the crowds coming down to John to be baptized. And the one who also came here to be baptized was Jesus. In those days, Jesus came from Nazareth in Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan River. As soon as he came up out of the water, Jesus saw the heavens opening and the Spirit descending like a dove upon him. Then a voice came from heaven saying, "You are my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." And this event marks the beginning of Jesus' ministry and public life. Truly an event that changed the history of humanity. But there's one more interesting point. After baptizing Jesus in the Jordan, João changes location. Then he starts baptizing people in a place called Enon near Salim. Now, João was also baptizing in Enon, near Salim, because there was plenty of water there and people were coming and being baptized. But where is this mysterious place and why did João choose it? En means spring in Hebrew, and the suffix on indicates plural, so Enon means springs or sources. The name of the place is the springs near Salim. So our first step will be to look for the ancient city of Salim, and then we'll find the springs next to it. Come with me to Enon near Salim. Let's go. We are now leaving Qasar Elud and continuing our journey to Enon. Welcome to Tel Shalem, which experts believe to be the biblical Salim. What we see here is an artificial mound, a tel made of archaeological remains. This city was founded more than 3,500 years ago during the Bronze Age and existed until the Mamluk period, about 700 years ago. And that's why over millennia the city was destroyed and rebuilt and the ground level kept rising, forming everything we see here. But of the many historical periods, without a doubt, the most important one here was the Roman era, which is exactly the time when John the Baptist and Jesus lived. And it was so important because of its location. Many trade routes and ancient roads passed through these paths. To Beit Shean, which was the capital of the Decapolis, and also routes to Jericho and Shechem. And most importantly, near here was the crossing point of the Jordan River, where you could cross in shallow waters to the other side. And in this way you had access to areas like Perea and Pella. This means that this area was busy and accessible and therefore ideal for John the Baptist to baptize the crowds. And now I want to invite you to come up with me to discover biblical Salim. Let's go. Now that we've come up, we can see this privileged location. Look all around us on every side. We can see large valleys. And if we keep looking in that direction, that mountain in the background is already part of what is nowadays Jordan, and between the mountain and us is the Jordan River. We can see how this place is easily accessible, and that's why it makes a lot of sense that João chose this area. Because that way the crowds, the maximum number of people, could come to him to be baptized here. And we also have another clue. Eusebius of Caesarea, one of the church fathers, wrote his book Onomasticon in the 4th century. He says that Salim and Enon were 8 miles from Beit Shean. 8 Roman miles are equivalent to about 12 modern kilometers, and exactly 12 kilometers from here, in this direction, is Beit Shean. Tel Shalem has hardly been excavated. What we can see around us are 20th century military trenches. That means the secrets of Tel Shalem of Salim are still buried. But for any place we look at here, the ground is full of archaeological remains. Look at this. Everywhere we can see ancient pottery. So, at first glance, it's a bit hard to guarantee for you exactly what the dating is, for example, of this piece. But this piece could be between 3,500 and 700 years old. But the greatest chance is that it really is from the Roman period, approximately from the time of Jesus and John the Baptist. And really, everywhere we look on the ground, there are thousands and millions of these pieces scattered around here. But even with limited excavations, what has been found at this site is shocking. In 1975, a bronze bust of the Roman Emperor Hadrian was found, even larger than life size. An inscription 11 meters long was also found. Each of the letters was 41 centimeters, and this inscription also spoke about Hadrian. And it was on top of a triumphal arch. But why is this important? We know that Adriano hated Jews and Christians, and that he builds on top of holy sites, places of pagan worship like the Temple of Jupiter on the Temple Mount and the Temple of Venus over the Holy Sepulchre. So it catches our attention that Hadrian also chooses this place to exalt and also builds a place of pagan worship here. But if this then is biblical Salim, where is Enon? Where are these springs, these sources of water? We can see here behind us a large number of water springs. Kibbutz Tirat Zvi, which is very close to here, took some of these springs and adapted them as fish farms. However, even after all these modifications, we can see that there is a great abundance of water here, just as described in the Bible. Imagine John in these waters and thousands of people coming to him to be baptized. And now I want to invite you to come down with me to the water springs to better understand about the baptism of John the Baptist. Come with me. We are now next to one of these springs. And now imagine with me what this place looked like before modernity was added to it. Imagine here João by the water's edge and thousands of people coming to him to be baptized. Baptism comes from the Greek word baptizo, which means to immerse or to dip. The baptism that was done here then was a baptism by immersion, and it wasn't João who created this practice. This technique, baptism by immersion, had already existed for a long time within Judaism and was called mikveh. However, João adds an even greater meaning to this practice. João's baptism was a baptism for repentance and remission of sins. Now let's talk about the most important baptism of all, the baptism that changed the history of humanity. When João baptizes Jesus in the waters of the Jordan River, look how interesting that is. After that, João changes places, and then he starts baptizing the crowd here at the springs of Enon. Meanwhile, after his own baptism, Jesus now begins to baptize his followers and disciples. Up until this moment, John the Baptist was much more famous and well-known than Jesus. John the Baptist already had thousands of followers and disciples, while Jesus was only just beginning his ministry and public life. And some of John's followers don't understand what is happening and start to feel jealous of the crowds going to Jesus to be baptized. Then a discussion arose between John's disciples and a Jew about purification. And they went to John and said to him, "Master, the one who was with you on the other side of the Jordan, the one you testified about, is baptizing and everyone is going to him." John answered, "No one can receive anything unless it is given to him from heaven. You yourselves are witnesses that I said I am not the Christ, but I was sent ahead of him." The bride belongs to the bridegroom. The friend of the bridegroom who stands and listens to him rejoices greatly at the bridegroom's voice. Therefore, this joy of mine is now complete. He must increase, but I must decrease. This is the main point when John says, "It is necessary that he increases and I decrease." It's true that for a time, John the Baptist and Jesus had parallel ministries. But from the moment John baptizes Jesus in the waters of the Jordan, he understands that his ministry and his mission had changed. And part of this change is also a physical move from the Jordan River to here. Enon, and in Enon, the ministry of John the Baptist continues. A ministry that, as he himself says, must decrease so that Jesus can increase. And it's true. The ministry here in Enon decreases. It decreases until it really disappears. This place is completely forgotten. For centuries, no one knew where Salim or Enon were, even after the place was rediscovered. I assure you that most Israelis and even Christians around the world have never heard of Enon, and even less that this place still exists to this day. No one comes to visit this place, and access is actually a bit difficult. Up until today, and also for many years, the place remained closed due to military reasons. Up there were trenches and soldiers. And also here, this whole area around us is full of landmines. Look here, it's written in Hebrew, English, and Arabic. Caution, landmines. So, does that mean we can't go past this barbed wire fence because literally this whole area is full of mines? And look, up there, Tel Shalem Salim, where we were, is right here behind us. Up there where we were, yes. The area is cleared and landmines are no longer a risk. We don't do anything forbidden here on the channel, but we can see that a large part of the surrounding area is still closed off to this day. Look how beautiful it is. Here we can see more springs, more water sources, truly a great abundance. And this stands out even more considering that we're in a dry region. Look at the mountains in the background. We can see how little vegetation there is precisely because of the lack of water. And considering the time we're in, we're right in the middle of summer. And believe me guys, today is really hot and that's why there's this amount of water here. It even feels like we're in an oasis. And something very interesting that happened here in April this year is that they took one of the springs and emptied it. They took out most of the water, all the water they could, to do maintenance work. And when they were doing the maintenance work, archaeologists came here and found a large amount of ceramics, mainly from the Roman period and even pieces of mosaic from the Byzantine period. And the large number of findings at this site shows not only that the springs already existed, as the Bible itself tells us, but also that crowds were drawn to this place. There's one more important thing I need to tell you. These are not the only water sources, the only springs near Salim. A few kilometers from here, there are other places with water. However, most experts believe that these are the true sources for several reasons. First, because they are the closest to Salim. Literally right next to him and not 5, 10, 15 kilometers away. Also because of the abundance of water, the others are much smaller. And also because of the number of archaeological finds inside the springs and near them, even though no deep archaeological excavations have been carried out. This place has great archaeological and biblical potential. And really, my deep and sincere wish is that first of all the landmines are removed from this place. Then the site becomes open and accessible for major archaeological digs, so that they can reveal the whole truth about the springs of Enon and also about Salim. And then that the place will also be accessible to everyone, and that the whole world can come to know such an important place biblically. And that people can come here to connect with the ministry of John the Baptist, which opened the doors for the ministry of Jesus. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, and I'll see you next week.